Hello and welcome everyone to another StarCraft 2 England cast. Today I have got a game from the Razer replay pack of the week. It is from LiquidNonY, who is of course the blue Protoss player in the lower left position, and in the lower right position his opponent ostojiy, who is the red Zerg. That means we have a PvZ, or a Protoss versus Zerg if you want its full name, and the map is Antigua Shipyard. It's a ladder game. That means it's not forced cross spawn, which you could have known anyway because look, close positions, so that can add some interesting things. I mean, one of the most interesting things about the close position spawn is something I didn't know until it was actually EG's LZ Gamer. I cast one of his games. If you put infestors here, you can lob over infested turrets to the third base. That is just so sweet and cool. It's something I never knew and it's brilliant. But no, what can we expect from these two players? Well, obviously from NonY we'll probably see well, it won't be a fast expansion because we've got the pylon on the high ground, but a relatively quick Nexus out. And of course from ostojiy we should see a 14 or 15 pull. That's just a safe way of opening things, and anything other than that, basically a hatch burst would be completely crazy, and it can work obviously, but it's just super risky because if your opponent has gone for a forge fast expand, you can get cannons so easily and you just end up losing basically. So that's why you see very few Zerg players go for something like that as opposed to the 14 or 15 pull. Now it does actually look like ostojiy is gonna go for a hatch first because I just said it'd be crazy, he decided to do it. Sometimes these pro players do that. They preemptively assume a caster will be like, nah, they'll never do that. And then they do it on purpose just to make us look like complete fools. But that's fine because it should end up being an interesting game. And actually, this will pay off really well from NonY's opener, because for ostojiy, he's going to get his natural base up at a very, very good time. And there's not really much pressure that NonY can put on. There goes down the spawning pool as well. That went down at 16... I believe, yeah, it would have been 16, so a relatively early pool. That's fine, nothing matters there at all. It basically, you want to get that pool out pretty damn quick after you have already got up your hatchery, because otherwise you're going to run into some problems. The gas coming down as well, that will allow for some key tech, such as, for example, speed, roaches, or anything along those lines. Maybe even a super quick lair if he was going for, say, a 2-base muta type build. But that's fine. We do have the probe coming out to scout now. We do have the second gas out of NonY. Now, the reason that is really quite substantial is essentially because it means that, well, he's got a lot of tech coming. He's not going to be trying to expand or put on much pressure early on. It's all about getting the correct tech he wants. And basically, ostojiy should be able to assume that from the fact he's seen that gas. Usually, you tend to see players take the gas furthest away from the ramp first. That is purely because it means that if your opponent does start walking over, you can hopefully pick off the scout before they get any information on the gas timings, because that really is the critical thing. Now, NonY has done this build a few times in the games I've casted of his against Zerg, where he has gone for that second gateway relatively quickly, and I quite like that. It allows him to put on a little bit of pressure. He then tends to secure a natural base off of that, so we'll wait and see whether a probe comes down. He'll probably put the pylon down here, I would imagine. That'll give him a nice wall-off arc, but we'll wait and see what is done. We do still have just that one gas speed already on the way for ostojiy. He does have his natural base up, 2 queens. The only thing missing from his build so far, in my opinion, is either a 3rd or 4th queen, just purely for creeps, but I think that is so effective and so underutilized by certain Zerg players, and it really does give you benefits. And I mean, if you look at some of the other Zerg games on my channel, lots of Zerg players do get out queens purely for spreading creep, and the net effect is that by around kind of 10 to 12 minutes, they've covered half of the map in creep, and that is really, really beneficial as an early warning system. It also gives your units better speed, better reinforcement time, better defensive ability, and better engagement, so I really think it's a worthwhile thing to do. We've got the Nexus on its way down for NonY. The Roach one just finished up now for ostojiy. He's getting 5 roaches out, so he's probably going to come and do a little bit of prodding here. 6 roaches as well. It could be a nice little timing push. You do see this sometimes where you get these 2 bases up very, very quickly, you get quite a few units out. It could just be for a defensive posture, because as far as I'm aware, ostojiy still believes... Oh no, he has seen the pylon on the low ground. That will give away that a base has been taken. So both these players may just be going defensive, but now there's 20 Zerglings out. This is definitely a bit of aggression coming out here, but with such a small wall off, and obviously a lot of sentries out, the force fields are going to be absolutely brilliant. And as long as they are bang on, he shouldn't, NonY that is, shouldn't have a tough time defending this. And really, these roaches and zerglings could get eaten up, but this is not a good time to be moving out, because of course there is nothing in here to secure it. Those force fields are going to have to go down. One sentry falls very, very quickly. The roaches were able to clean up everything else incredibly fast, and this was not a good engagement at all for NonY right now, who does have a handful of units. He's got the Stargate there as well with the Void Ray coming out, but there was a tiny gap, not big enough for roaches though. But basically these sentries are now low on energy. A complete wall off getting formed here. The first zerglings on their way through. A couple more force fields, although there is a slight gap at the side there. The roaches should be able to push through, but there goes down yet another force field, and this is really where force fields is so great early on. More pylons being force field to replace those in the wall off getting kicked down. The first Void Ray coming down. Now Void Ray obviously will eventually clear everything out, and now those pylons were cancelled just as everything gets into the base. A couple of force fields go down, but obviously they will be able to be held for a long time. But this natural base is probably going to go down now, and there's very little that NonY can do to stop that. Basically that Void Ray can slowly start working down on these units, but to be honest, from ostojiy's point of view, he is in just such an amazing spot. He's taking his opponent back down to one base. He's comfortably sitting on two bases, droning behind this. If we look at the worker count, 31 to 34, so in ostojiy's favour already. He's picking up a lot of pylons. He's got rid of the tech in the form of the Stargate, and now he can really just keep piling the pressure on the roaches. And zerglings now pulling back. That's a great move. It's also bought him time to get down that evolution chamber. We should see a spore crawler drop down at each base just to be on the safe side, although it may not be necessary. I mean, I would still put one down just at each base just in case, but I mean, the reason there's not an essential need is there's no Phoenix out on the field that have been seen, and one Void Ray can be dealt with by the Queens. That Overlord, just getting some scouting information, seeing nothing to be really scared of is there. We do have some extra Queens already built. We have the third base on its way for ostojiy, which again is going to keep him very comfortably a base up. We do have that Void Ray poking and prodding around, but the only Overlord left on the field as far as I'm aware is this one, which may or may not get scouted. It probably will, just by the way this Void Ray is moving right now, but that shouldn't matter in the slightest. I mean, yes, it's 100 minerals lost, but if we look at the loss tab right now, it is still coming out a lot worse for NonY right now. And I mean, obviously the upgrades coming out. We've got the Hydra down on its way now. The reason you don't tend to see Hydras in ZVP is purely because of the Colossi and the way it absolutely trashes Hydralisks. But as you look, the Robotics Bay itself only just coming out for NonY right now. That gives a very small timing window for ostojiy to really push forward with Hydras, which of course absolutely devastating to gateway units. And that may allow a really, really interesting push timing, and also very much help with dealing with that Void Ray, which is already taking a couple of hits, just trying to get a couple of drones off. Does manage to kill one or two, so that's pretty good. And well, it's now just down to what damage ostojiy can do with this kind of roachling Hydra ball. Roach speed is on its way out. We do have the +1 ground melee weapons, so obviously that is really, really good for ostojiy there. His zerglings will be more effective. We do have coming out now an observer from the robotics facility. The robotics bay is finished, and extended thermal lance on its way out. Now that's going to be absolutely critical, but again, that won't really become a huge problem until the Colossi count gets up a bit higher. I mean, ideally you're looking at between 3 and 4 Colossi before they become a super big threat to just pure roach hydraling. Then obviously they just start melting everything, so you do have to get some way to counter them, usually in the form of corruptors. But for the meantime, it shouldn't be too bad actually. I mean, yes, we've got those two Hydras just keeping that Void Ray on incredibly low health. We do have that Queen, the Void Ray just really pinned back. We do have the 5th and 6th gas on their way out for ostojiy, and looking down at NonY's base, is getting up more gateways, a lot of gateways there. And essentially it's just going to try and keep some money low. If we look at the worker count, 60 to 45, that is very much looking great for ostojiy right now in terms of his income. He's done more damage, he's got more bases up, everything is where he wanted to be. Tech, perhaps fractionally behind, because obviously that tier 3 tech is done already for NonY, but the Spire on its way, the Infestation Pit nearly done, and that's really starting to get towards the endgame composition that ostojiy will be looking at, which quite rightly so will be that Broodlord Infestor style. And this is really a mid-game transition. The only criticism I could possibly have is maybe a slight overcommitment with Hydralisks. He knew there was only that one Void Ray on the field, and he has gone quite heavy with 11. They're not cheap units, they're very gas heavy, and as a result has maybe delayed his Spire slightly, but he hasn't and won't be able to do any pressure with those units how they are. I mean, some interesting things that ostojiy could have considered doing here, maybe going down a Nidus network, dropping that in the main. That would have been a very interesting use. Obviously getting Hydras into the base would have allowed them to do tremendous amounts of damage. The 4th base on its way out here for our Zerg player as well. And just looking down, we do have pathogen glands. It must have been started. No, it hasn't. That is a slight mistake in my opinion. You want to get those pathogen glands ASAP because it is such a powerful upgrade, and infestors themselves are such a powerful unit. It really does help. Now, this is the problem I was talking about, why you don't get Hydras in big numbers, because they just melt to Colossi. They just literally get completely trounced, and there's nothing you could possibly do about it. Now, we see the 4th base for ostojiy is down. The 3rd base just coming up here for NonY. The Zerglings have managed to creep their way in, and so is the rest of the force. It will basically force a cancel out of NonY right there, but a lot of force fields are spent to kill very few units, and I'm personally a very firm believer of you should consider force fields as a resource at all points in the game. How are you going to be spending them? Yes, they regenerate, but there are a finite number of them at any point in the game, and if you are spending a lot of force fields to kill 1 or 2 units, is it worth it? Will it be detrimental later? Obviously in this situation, no, you've got a lot of sentries with full energy, so it's not a huge problem, but especially early game, consider it, in my opinion, as a resource, just in the same way as a Zerg player would consider lava as a resource. Now, yet again, these rotates just poking up and back, another 2 force fields forced. I love this as well, the spine wall coming out from ostojiy. Absolutely brilliant. This is just going to act as a delaying tactic and could potentially allow a nice little sandwich of units, etc, etc. So that's great. We do have Hive on the way out. We do have the first Corruptors popping very well. They are actually already out there just hiding somewhere. They are going to help massively in dealing with the Colossi. We do have effectively a supply lead to ostojiy, but if we look at the army supply, it's actually in NonY's favour fractionally, and that's to be expected. Now, the trouble with that for ostojiy is he's got to deal with his force, and obviously the Colossi count is getting really high, and I can't help but feel the longer this goes on, it's going to start causing problems for ostojiy. This is a big engagement right now. Those Stalkers manage to do a lot of damage, and NonY seems to take very little in terms of resource damage. He's picking up those spine crawlers now, which is exactly what he wants to be doing, and he's just carrying that momentum, and there's such a hideously high number of Colossus out on the field right now, and that is going to force ostojiy to pull back as far as he can, because he just doesn't have the ground army to deal with that, and basically those Stalkers are going to be able to clean up the Corruptors very quickly indeed. If we look at the resources lost, suddenly this is swinging massively into NonY's favour. And I think the real reason this has occurred is because ostojiy did go to those Hydras, but didn't really do anything with them. That was the big problem in my opinion. A Burrow does go down, but obviously there is no way to pick that off without an observer in the field. We do have a Zergling Rumby to the 3rd. That is pretty damn effective, and it didn't manage to get too many workers, but it will manage to pick off that Nexus for sure. So again, picking off a base for a handful of units is definitely worth it, but losing all of your army, that's not so good in my opinion. Now, obviously the Hive is done and the Greater Spire just started morphing. Greater Spire takes an awfully long time to build though. The +2 ranged attack upgrades for the Zerg player on their way out. We do have a good arc of engagement here for ostojiy. These Corruptors have managed to get to the back, but with only a handful engaging now, a lot more coming in. Those Stalkers are just able to clean up so well, and this is looking very good for NonY right now in my opinion. He's going to be able to do everything and anything he wants because, well, a huge amount of spine crawlers is picked up there, and remaxing on roaches is a real short-term solution. They're very expensive units in terms of supply, and I just don't think they're going to have the stopping power for this, and this is going to have to be an incredible defense out of ostojiy right now. He's pulling all the drones, he's losing an awful lot of drones right now. The Colossi are still up, we've got Stalker reinforcements coming in, and just look at the damage being done literally everywhere. One Colossus falls though, and now that takes it down under that kind of critical mass that you would like to see. The Stalkers are of course still in there. Blink hasn't been researched, which is a bit strange, but that's all good. So many Overlords getting picked off. Obviously the natural base could go down here, and to be honest, this is looking to be a bit of an endgame force where there isn't much ostojiy to do with what he's got on the field. He's at equal supply, because it doesn't have those critical mass units that he really needs to engage this effectively. Yes, he's getting an awful lot of roaches out, but the roaches themselves aren't able to do too much. We've got so many workers killed, 24 already down. The Greatest Spire going down will be an absolutely massive loss in itself, because that takes a long time to build. The Hive will probably be the next target, and that really will put ostojiy back into the Stone Age. ostojiy is still showing absolutely no sign of being able to combat this force. He has managed to pick off the third base here, though, behind all of this push, which is pretty nice, but I mean, that is a small group of roaches which will get cleaned up, and he's still not dealing with the really pressing problem, which are units in his main killing everything. The roach one being rebuilt up at his new surrogate main base. Obviously, we will have the Hive go down as well. The Evo Chamber going down as well isn't a huge problem. A couple of drones burrowed. Would like to see an observer over here just to really help clean that out. Then the natural base will go, and obviously the third is also looking to be very vulnerable. We do have a handful of roaches down here trying to poke and prod around. The Hive has fallen behind this as well now. The probes are being called, and this is really a two-screen game. We've got a screen over here whereby ostojiy is attempting to put on some pressure, but those sentries coming out could ruin the party, to be honest, but the corruptible good division. And over here, obviously, we've got NonY just going to town on his base. It's real kind of a two-story game right now, where both players are trying to attack and defend simultaneously, although I must say NonY doing a great job of defending, and that's something which I've really picked up on through every single one of his games in this replay pack, is that NonY's defense is absolutely brilliant, and I mean, it is really top quality. I absolutely love watching it. It has won him games. ostojiy is definitely, in my opinion, starting to cause problems. I mean, he's losing so much. A lot of these drones are going to get taken out. That could be a big loss. Some great force fields go down, and obviously the burrow and tunneling force will allow those units to get back through, but not before stupidly high numbers of drones are taken out. This force should finally get cleaned up now. The Colossi goes down, and those stalkers are now just going to die. But if we take a look at the work count, 38 to 42 in NonY's favour, but basically it's a 2 mining base option for ostojiy compared to just 1 mining base available here for NonY, who's trying to rescue his third. So things have actually reset pretty nicely. The only thing missing, of course, here is there's no spawning pool. That's only just getting built now, and obviously still on hatchery tech. So no layer up, obviously no hive, no infestation pit, no spire, none of the critical things you really need, whereas all of the key tech requirements of NonY are still up. He's just got a resource problem, and while you can theoretically win games just by flooding with these 2-0 roaches, eventually you're running into problems, and the upgrade advantage is in ostojiyy's favour. He's got a lot of roaches here, but he wants to be careful how he engages. There's the observer there, so burrow won't come to the rescue quite yet. We do have a third base now, shall we call it, coming out for ostojiy. That's good. He needs to start thinking about taking a fourth, though, because he has seen the third base coming out from NonY. That could cause him problems in itself. We do have a lot more Zerglings coming in, and this is a very aggressive style of Zerg play now, where essentially ostojiy feels that he is behind, so he's going to try and deal damage if and when he can. Worker count is exactly equal, but basically that won't be represented here because the workers are split equally for ostojiy, whereas they're just on one base, which is getting very low. And I mean, this base for NonY is very low on minerals right now. That's only probably got about a minute left to it, maybe a little bit more. It's a big force though being built up here by our Protoss player. He's got, what, 5 Colossus up now, a lot of sentries and quite a few stalkers. He's getting 2 Colossus at a time. It's really the bulk of his army, and that is a good move to make because ultimately he knows that he's picked off all of the tech. Lair only just finishing up again now for ostojiy, and that means he's still got a long time if he does want to build the spire. That spire ultimately takes 100 seconds, so just under 2 minutes, and that's again a long time for these Colossi numbers to build up and do something, but NonY really does have to do something with them, otherwise he could end up in a situation where he just has a lot of Colossi and not enough units to support those. And it's something you tend to see with Zerg players as well, whereby they'll get an awful lot of infestors out thinking hubbed up. Infestors, good units, they're very practical, they utilize a lot of different roles within my army composition, but the downside to them is that if you don't have units supporting them, then you can chain fungal all you want, but unless you cover their entire army, micro perfectly and can just keep the chain fungal up without taking any damage, eventually those infestors are a bit squishy and will die, or they'll run out of energy and then you'll die. And that is something that I see happen quite often, where the infestor number just creeps a little bit too high and can cause Zerg's problems. And that's exactly the same thing I can't help but feel NonY could potentially be risking here by getting up just so many Colossi. Although he has stopped for the moment, he's getting the +2 ground weapon upgrade. If we take a look at the count, 8 Colossi isn't too many to be fair, but it's a lot of his supply, and especially against an only ground army that could be very, very potent. We do have all of the creep tubers basically spread out crazy, and well, we've got a lot of roaches coming down right now, and those force fields, they're worthwhile. You're picking up some units for free, you're really showing just how much you've got on the field right now, and it is a lot of stuff. We should see another wave of Stalkers join in, that's brilliant. Blink is of course half done at the 28-minute mark, so not really a standard timing for Blink, but again, it's a very, very potent and powerful upgrade. We do have the first Corruptors on their way out, but there's going to be an awful lot of Corruptors needed in order to pick off these Colossi effectively, so can't wait to see how that is utilised. But the big concern I have is this is essentially now one base Protoss, only one mining base there, so the income for NonY is going to be very low any second. That could cause some problems. Those Colossi getting some good hits off. Needs to be careful with the force fields. Quite a few just getting wasted and not doing much at all. Now, obviously these Corruptors, they're poking and prodding around. The Overseer is there to pick off the Observer. Great move as well. That now makes Burrow viable yet again. And now, this is where the creep proceeding is just so great, because it takes such a long time for creep to get out the way, and that basically delays NonY taking a fourth. And that is precisely what you want to be doing as a Zerg player. Starve out your opponent, build up the force you need. The greatest part on the way, more Corruptors joining in. The Corruptor count now getting a bit more sizable. Quite a few probes getting picked off here. That is a good little move. I mean, if we look at the work count, 49 to 48, so still dead on even, but it's how they're spread out which is going to make the difference to the income. Now, obviously all the minerals are gone. We're now looking at, well, just under double the mineral income for ostojiy compared to NonY. Also, if we look at the gas income, that is in ostojiy's favour as well. Income really is a deciding factor in StarCraft 2, but this is a big, big force from NonY. If we look at the army supply, 119 to 124, so pretty similar, but it's just the pure number of Colossi, and if ostojiy is able to deal with them, which I don't know if he will, because the Stalker control is going to be great out of NonY, but he has done everything right. He's got these Corruptors ready to go and take out the Colossi. He's got some units at the front right now. Broodlords morphing in, and that is an interesting choice, morphing in those Broodlords. I'm not sure if that's going to pay off as well as it could for him, because those Broodlords obviously are going to take time to build. He's going to lose his base. He has basically sacrificed that by pulling everything back. Supply block as well will not be beneficial in the slightest. Behind this, of course, a fourth base coming out for NonY, and NonY could even actually look to get a fifth, which I don't think would be a bad move right now, because he is on a dominating push and he should expand. Basically, attack and expand at the same time is always a good move, because your opponent is too busy about worrying about defense as opposed to attack. Now, if Vision of this high ground was viable, then obviously we'd see those Stalkers link up, and that could be a big, big problem, and that's exactly what we're going to see happen here. And now this could be the real turning point in the game. This Colossi absolutely going to town on the roaches, shredding them out so quickly. Yes, the Stalkers on the high ground are getting picked off, but reinforcements are streaming in. Only one Broodlord, actually one more Broodlord is at the back there, but the Corruptor count very, very low now. The Stalkers are doing everything they need to. All of those Colossi still up, and I think that should be GG. If this is held, it would be absolutely incredible. There's only a handful of Corruptors. Those Colossi just doing so much damage to all the roaches, and well, that should definitely be GG right now. And it was beautiful play by NonY. And there's the GG grats from ostojiy. So guys, if you like that cast, please give the video a thumbs up or a like. Leave a cool comment below about the game, the cast, or the players. Follow me on Twitter, that'd be awesome. Send me a tweet, and of course subscribe, because I do get new top level games up every single day of the week, and if you like them, I wouldn't want you to miss any. So thank you very much for watching, everyone, and catch you again soon. Bye for now.